Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Teams ahead of our round 14 clash against the Dogs on Thursday night. So we're mixing it up a little bit with a Wednesday evening Teams edition. As always, a shout out to Southside Pizza, who are the sponsors of this segment, and a good opportunity to grab a slice of pizza before we kick things off tomorrow night. Kicking off round 14 against the Doggies. I hope everybody is well rested and relaxed after a weekend off for the Saints with the bye and going into the bye with an unexpected and surprising win against the D's, which was very nice. And yeah, as I said, completely unexpected from my point of view. If I'm honest, I just thought we were going to throw in the towel even in that last quarter. I don't know if that's the pessimist inside me, but anyway, it was good and really refreshing to just be able to relax and really soak up a win while we headed into the bye. I think we might do things a little bit differently as I welcome back Ollie and Evan. Given that we played the Dogs so recently, not only will we sort of have a look at our most recent game against the D's, but we'll also look a bit closer. Probably unfortunately. Hopefully we can turn things around considering how that last game went against the Dogs. But we will have a little bit of a close look at that too. But before we get stuck into too much, we'll have a look at the ins and outs that have come in. We've had a little bit more time to look at the changes, which from my perspective is pretty much what I expected to happen. Obviously Filippo with that unfortunate injury really early on against the D's, which is just so frustrating and probably more frustrating for him than anyone that sees him have another stint on the sidelines, but hopefully for not too long. And another sort of unfortunate out with Boxall making way for McRae, and really excited to see Stocko return as well. Are you sort of the same line of thinking that they were pretty expected changes, Evan and Ollie? What is your take?
Yeah, pretty expected. It's a real shame, as you say, with Matty. And I'm hoping Boxall gets a better run of it at the very least next year. Maybe a bit like Garcia, where he gets, run a sub a couple of times and then gets a few more solid games the next year. But it's still, I think that's a more solid squad, or at the very least more experienced. Even though I was very happy with the team last week, 2 weeks ago. I'll throw out that I think I said, if it's not a big guess, but if Max Gawn gets fewer than 10 goals, it's not 10 marks, 10 marks, then we'll be in for the running there. I think he only got about 5. So great job by Marshall sticking with him, and Caminiti, and, did a great job stopping their intercepts, and got a great win there.
Yeah, I mean, I was in shambles 5 minutes into the game when Mateus got subbed out because he was still in my super coach team, so he gave me a 5, which was great. And then obviously considering more for the actual football club rather than myself, that he's just come back from a long-term injury. And from what I know, the part of his calf that he hurt can potentially be due to overtraining, which is possible considering how much work he put in since the stress fracture. So that's obviously not great that it's a TBC, even though they're saying it's not going to be long. And I kind of understand dropping Hugh Boxall just because he hasn't, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but he hasn't really had a great run at it when he's been in the team. So I think it's good to give him a couple of weeks in the twos at least. And at the same time, McRae and Stocker just had to come back in.
Yeah, that's right. And it's really nice to get that experience back. And I think if I was going to sort of talk about anyone who's been a bit of a surprise packet, it would have been Stocker before his injury. I just think he's been really solid and really important for us this year, which, sort of came out of the blue for me, from my point of view. Some others might be different, but I sort of just didn't rate him that highly last year, if I'm honest, whereas this year he's just been, I think even with you, Evan, I think he's been one of your favourite players, and I'd probably say the same, just the way he's gone about it and how important he is to our team. And I reckon a couple of times he swung games our way just purely off one of his really crazy tackles that, win us the ball, and then we've gone and kicked a goal down the other end, and it's just altered the momentum of the game. And maybe I'm getting a bit carried away with moments, but it's a momentum game these days, and having moments like that is just so crucial, and I'm just really excited to have him back. Before we get stuck into the midfield, I did sort of want to look at the interchange as well, because finally we don't have an extended bench. We've got the full lineup. So I did want to sort of get your take on who you think might be the sub and your preference. I do kind of like talking about it each week, even though it's no secret that I'm not a fan of the sub, but like talking about it anyway.
I would imagine it would be Stocker purely injury wise. He is definitely one of my favourites, him and Mason Wood, just as that all heart role player. But I reckon depending on his fitness, I might just need that role. But at the same time, it could be Carroll. Being too much of an optimist, I was happy last week at least to see nearly a full game from Carroll, basically, considering how early Matty went out there. But I reckon it'll be between those two. Definitely not McRae against his old side. And got to see Butler back out there.
Yeah, hadn't thought of Stocker. That's an interesting point you bring up. I was pretty nailed on Jack Carroll. I'm glad he's kept his spot, like you said, because the injury, it opens up sort of a little bit of extra chance for him. I think either him or Stocker, considering McRae just is too good to be sub. Hall's been too good this year, and Butler was quite good last week. Interestingly, it's kind of related. Liam Henry's the first emergency, so that could mean we see him in the next couple of weeks. Could be a sub sort of player, I reckon, just while he gets back to AFL speed. But it could go a couple of ways depending on how they want to line up against the Dogs midfield, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and a good sort of take regarding Henry, especially given the last time he played for us, how he just looked really underdone and unimpressive, if I'm completely honest. So I actually wouldn't mind seeing him come back in as a sub and just give him a little bit of a taste and maybe take the pressure off him a little bit when he does return. But I'm probably in agreement that I'm leaning towards Carroll, but Evan, I don't mind your point about Stocker coming back from injury too and sort of easing him in as well. But happy for Tootsie to get a bit of a string of games together now as well, and seeing him straight into the lineup is nice. So hopefully he can sort of continue his form. I feel like he's just slowly making impact, but I think that he just comes across as a real classy type player and a smart footballer. And I'd say the same about Carroll in terms of being a smart footballer. I just really liked what I saw from his game, someone with like limited experience. I think he's got a good size on him and a good footy brain. So, yeah, really excited to see more from him. But, yeah, it might be a short stint, unfortunately. That brings us to the midfield. I might get you both to discuss if one of you wants to look at sort of the Melbourne game and then maybe the last time we played the Dogs. And I guess one will be pros and one will be cons if you look at both of those games. But a lot to talk about in that regard because, yeah, we can sort of throw up some ideas of what worked well and maybe what didn't and how we can change things up, etc.
Yeah, I think it's about time that Windy gets a shout out because we've spoken about him a lot on here about how he sort of looks lost in his role. And the last couple of weeks, he's been really good. A little bit less, not first quarter against Gold Coast. Noah Anderson got off the chain a little bit there, but last week he was great. I can't remember off the top of my head. I didn't rewatch any of the game if he was tagging or not, but he had 87% centre bounce attendances, which is massive. It's his biggest for the season. 28 touches, 4 tackles, 5 clearances, which is just massive considering we want him to show us and the coaching staff and, internally at the club. But as fans, we want to see what he's capable of when he gets let loose a little bit. So that was really good to see. He sort of looked more comfortable. I didn't take down his disposal efficiency, so I'm not sure how good he was with the ball. But you'd hope from 28 disposals, he's at least got 60 to 65% of them in the midfield, keeping that in mind, that are effective. The Hugh Boxall role has really surprised me in the last couple of weeks. Like, he's having under 50% time on ground, which is sort of numbers you'd see for a substitute or someone who's been subbed off. but he had 48%, or what was it? 48% CBA. So 48% of centre bounces he attended against Melbourne, but had 50% or less time on ground, which is interesting. It makes me think that maybe they don't believe in his tank. But at the same time, he's been performing so well in the twos. So it doesn't make sense to me to play someone in their, first, second, third, fourth game, but not give them the opportunity, just have them sort of sitting on the bench for most of the game. Like, you may as well just sub him out at that point if you're not going to play him. And I thought the midfield balance looked quite good. We sort of looked a little less one pace, and I think Hunter Clark helps out with that a lot. I've liked what I've seen from him. We compare him, we have probably stupidly, to Scott Pendlebury a little bit in the way that he sort of is really slow with the ball and gets those handballs over his head and that sort of thing. But he's been really good since coming back. McRae coming back into the side probably messes with that a little bit. So someone's going to have to get a bit less time in the midfield, but still, it was a massive improvement on the last couple of weeks, especially.
Yeah, massive improvement there. That is really odd about Boxall there. Maybe they're worried he's not really defensively minded or isn't really great on an attack if they've moved forward. So they're just kind of relying on him as a pure midfielder. That'll be certainly interesting to keep an eye on and how they do in the VFL as well, what he trains there. At Windy, definitely the hardest tag I've seen all year from him with... from the first bounce, just being so physical and aggressive with Pickett there, which was
Pickett,
was
tagging,
great to
you're
see.
right.
Yeah, massive. Got the holding the ball in the first sort of series of disposals there. And I know a lot of coaches worry about the hard tag because it shuts down your own game style. But I think Windy has proven in his best games that he's the kind of tagger that can have massive impact going the other way at the same time. As you said, the clearances, the disposals, he's not just shutting down their side, which he did as well, but he's getting that impact. And I think we're going to need his grit and that sort of pressure in the midfield. I'll probably talk about clearances later because that was a big problem against the Dogs last time. But I'll also touch on 8 or 9 of their goals, about half, the last time we played the Dogs, came from what you'd normally regard as midfielders, which is just too many. Like, we're here asking for 3 or 4 from, Steele or maybe Sinclair. They had like 9. So to a certain degree, just hoping to see a lot more grit from, your Windies, your Steels, communicating, swapping over, and being accountable for their opposing midfielders, because you can't be given basically one of our weekly scores just off midfielders without even involving the forwards. So that's what I really want to see coming up against the Dogs again. Some bit more accountability running through there defensively.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and you've kind of touched on majority of the players that I was going to touch on, and I think that Hunter Clark's probably going to be the big difference when you look at the last time we played the Dogs to this time, because I not only rate his in and under handballs and that kind of thing, but his tackling is elite. I do not see many broken tackles from a Hunter Clark tackle. He just sets the tone with that, and we've really missed it, because I don't know how many times this year I've been like, can we just learn to tackle? Like, we look so timid out there, but he lands them every time, and he'll save like clearances going the other way. Like, he is so important for that. So I'm really looking forward to him bringing that against the Dogs. And I've actually liked Steele's last couple of games. Might not be a shared opinion, but I've liked the way he's gone about it. He's hit the scoreboard every now and then, and I just feel like his physicality's come back a little bit, and him just sort of taking his first option, and a bit like Clark, maybe Hunter Clark being in the team's helped him a little bit, even like with McRae going out. So I'm really interested to see how that dynamic works with the three of them. Maybe even Steele can push forward occasionally. I'm not sure if you think he's the type of player that can push forward. At least he seems like he's been able to find the middle of the sticks as a mid this year. Not like that he's had a lot of goals, but I feel like when he's had the chance, he's converted more often than not. Would you be happy to see Steele sort of push forward with that midfield group we've got now, or do you think maybe not against the Dogs when we need all the grit in there that we can get?
I think he's done it in the past. I distinctly remember like when we were in good form, sort of 2020. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but I think that he was bobbing up for goals quite often. There was one I remember he kicked, I think in the Fremantle game, not Fremantle, the Giants game that locked us into finals. He had 13 goals in 2021 and 11 goals in 2020, and that's his highest output. So around that time, he was sort of emerging as our best midfielder, winning best and fairest, and he was also hitting the scoreboard. And I think that speaks to your point about him being in good form and maybe being able to get off the chain a little bit because he's got that help from Hunter Clark, who's a tackle machine, like you were saying.
Yeah, I'd second that. I'm not the greatest Steele fan at the moment, but mainly because he's having good games, undoubtedly. But is he having the 2-3 Brownlow vote games that a midfield captain like Merritt or Dawson or Neil will be having, and Cripps, undoubtedly. So it's mainly just what he's compared to in his role that I think makes it so hard for him to succeed there. Because he has been solid moving forward from the midfield. We've gotten a few more goals from the midfield this year, but just what we need is maybe not what we're getting every week, but it's definitely a step in the right direction as far as physicality and ball usage goes.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I'll give you that. Yeah, he's definitely like projecting back up. But yeah, I do agree when you look at some of the other sort of A grade or captains across the league that, yeah, he's not hitting the same level that of those guys, and even like when you mentioned when he was back in that AA type form. So hopefully he can keep continuing on that. And it's just really unfortunate again that Filippo just can't get right, because I do feel like he's really handy in there and can help out as well. But again, if Windy can keep up what he's been doing, I think that his game is the benchmark for him, and that's what we've all been really keen to see. And he just had, for me, it was almost a perfect game from Windy in terms of where he's at and that tagging role and getting plenty of his own ball. And I didn't really notice too many errors from him, so I'd assume his efficiency was quite okay. And then touching on Steele playing forward, I guess that brings us to our forward discussion. Again, sort of what was your take following the Melbourne game? And then from memory, the last time we played the Dogs, they had a pretty tough time because our midfield got slaughtered. So our inside 50s were impacted, and obviously the forwards are impacted by that. So, yeah, what's sort of your take with this and how we go about beating the Dogs from a forward line perspective this time around?
I think your point about the midfield getting beaten makes it not a clean slate for the forwards, but the delivery just wasn't there. So we look at it, it's hard to compare from then to now because of how badly we got beaten. Last week, it was good to see that Dan Butler not only came back into the team after an injury, it was in Alice Springs, so it was really hot. So that probably doesn't help. Or not hot, but it was, the temperature is higher, but the sun is so hot in Alice that it definitely makes it a lot harder with the humidity and so on. And he didn't necessarily blow me off the park, but he kicked 4. And there's a lot of them that were like the trusty Dan Butler goals where he's just somehow he's in the goal square 1 out and he can take a mark 15 meters out from goal. And that's the perfect small forward role to complement Higgins. Obviously, he's been a little bit quieter because teams have been putting more attention into him. But if we've got that second sort of small forward role, which I think Collard was not playing, he was trying to be a little bit more of an at the front of the pack rover, maybe win a high free kick if he gets the ball, whereas Dan Butler is similar to Higgins in the way that he can take a mark, but he can also get loose and run with the ball. So that was really good to see. And I was actually kind of surprised that Keeler wasn't spoken about more for Rising Star. I'm fairly sure he's still eligible. Like his first quarter, he maybe didn't back up his first quarter so well, but it was one of the best that I've seen this year from any player. especially St Kilda player. Like, he's kicked 2 goals, he missed 1. He's taking Stephen May to the cleaners for the first 15 minutes. Like, you just don't see that to an all-Australian level defender from a, 6 or 7 gamer. So that was great, showing that maybe, he could be someone that could complement Max King when he comes back if he decides to hold his spot. And what was interesting was he wasn't even playing most of his time deep forward. He was more like 60-40 forward mid. So he was playing more centre half forward and then getting back, which is nice to see considering we haven't really, there's been a lot of talk about Max King playing up the ground a little bit more and looking more exciting when he's up the ground, but he's still been more of a stay-at-home forward. So, however that works out when King comes back. And then with the 2 small forwards, like I was speaking about before, the structure to me seems a lot better. So, we're not looking like we're 1 out, and with Keeler playing forward as well, it's not like we're just bombing it up in the air and no one can compete, because when no one can compete in the air, no one can compete on the ground. So that takes out the small forwards as well, because the defenders either just punch it out of bounds or they take the mark, which has been happening a lot. But when Keeler can compete, it means Sharman can fly in from the side. It means Owens has a better run and jump at the ball. And if it comes to ground, Butler's there or he's out the back. Higgins is there. Max Hall's there, Toby's there. Like, we've got a lot of guys that can move around the ball really well. So as long as we have a target who we can kick it to and they can compete, it makes the forward line work so much better.
Yep. Yeah. Yes to all of that there, but particularly the Butler aspect there, because I think throughout the year we've potentially been, getting repeat entries from our pressure or bringing the ball down from our pressure. And then either it's basically Higgins or nothing once the ball comes down. There's fewer people that sort of have that high pressure head on their shoulders to either know when to break forward or to just snap the goal from there. So we've had some exciting ones there, but it feels like Dan Butler's just built for that. And I've always loved his pressure, but it was just great to see him get that scoreboard impact that he probably hasn't had since 22, 23 sort of thing, when he was really going crazy for us. So great. Keeler, that marking presence was, I feel like a lot of the time Sharman does great marks, but they're high effort sort of marks where he's leaping over a pack or really running for it. Whereas Keeler was just sort of that big bodied marking target where you can solid go there. So it looks like a much better forward squad as a whole, both experience wise and, as you say, sort of strategically fitting into those roles. So much happier there. And as we touched on, it is pretty much a clean slate when it comes to the last game, because I believe it was something along the lines of 69 inside 50s to them and about 34 to us. So you're just not going to compete like that. And there's only so much they can do to help enable those forward 50 entries when the ball's just not getting in there. So hopefully this week they get that opportunity. We've got, whether it's Keeler, Butler, whoever it is running up the ground, helping out. But we touch on it every week, but it starts with the midfielders there. It starts with their ability to bounce back from half back and just give them a chance to kick a goal, please. Like, we were relatively efficient when we got it in there. We, more than half the time we got a score on the board. It's just getting it in there. Sharman, I think, missed like 2 identical kicks in a row last time, which I thought my TV had bugged and skipped backwards 30 seconds. But, that this time, fresh slate, slightly different forward lineup. Please give them the ball.
Yeah, I'm quite liking this lineup. And the thing I'll touch on with Keeler, like the handful of games he played prior to this couple, he just looked shell-shocked to me, and like he just didn't look up to AFL at all. And nothing against him, but that's just the reality that it looked like. And, I think a few people were quick to write him off and say, nah, he's no good. Whereas I was like, give the guy a break. He's only played a very small number of games. So I was just really happy for him to come out like that and look really like he wanted it. Like, he just wanted the ball. He was clean, no fumbles, especially in that first quarter, as we touched on. And then to kick that goal in the last to seal the game, like that was an elite kick, like straight through the big ones, clutch goal. Really impressed by that. And I think we will see a bit of inconsistency with Keeler. We do forget he's still a young kid who hasn't obviously played a lot of footy. So I think if we can just keep the expectations, I think he's got the ability to really be that X factor we are screaming out for, but there will be times when he goes missing as well. And I think just having a little bit of patience with that is important. But if he can keep at the very minimum competing like you've touched on, I think that goes a long way, particularly with King being absent. It just gives us it just structures us up and gives us someone to sort of focus on. And then, we can sort of leave it to Higgins and Butler to clean up the not so pretty entries and things. So we do have really quality small forwards, especially if Butler can continue on and get back to some of his elite form that we saw a couple of years ago. I really do rate Butler. I think he's a very smart player, particularly when he takes his first options. Sometimes he can get in his own head and he'll sort of fluff around with it a bit. But I thought even that goal he sort of kicked from the scrimmage close to the square was just pure Butler just going bang. Like he's a very talented player. So I really hope he can continue and make the most of what can sometimes be really limited opportunities as a small forward. I did just want to quickly touch on Marshall as well, because Evan pre-game we did pre-show you did sort of touch on the fact that I think everyone was a little bit worried that Gawn was going to get off the chain. So a bit of a shout out to Marshall. Thought he did a really good job on nullifying Gawn, and he definitely wasn't a get out of jail free card for the D's like he normally is against us. So just wanted to acknowledge Rowe a little bit there. Moving on, we'll discuss this backline, and of course the Dogs have brought back Sam Darcy, which are we even surprised that that's happened against us?
Spot last time, Darcy this time.
Yeah. It's just like this. I just feel like this happens to the Saints all the time. And obviously I'm a Saints supporter, so you notice these things, but very annoying. And I did just want to bring up a comment as well regarding Burns and get a bit of your take, because I feel like there's a lot of talk about Burns. You either love him or hate him, and I just wanted to get your opinion, like as we discuss the back line, what your thoughts are on Burns.
I'm still not sold on Burns. Sorry to interrupt. I just don't think. I don't know. I see his role as a replaceable role. Like, I think he would be better. He's been better suited. I don't know if he's been better suited on the wing. He's another one of those guys that I don't want to turn into like a Ben Patton that just kind of plays half-back, wing, half-forward, defensive forward. Like, they're not the same player, but they just he never found a role in the team. And he played a lot of games where he was doing not much because we just kind of plugged him into wherever. Sort of glue guy. I think we saw that a few years ago with, I think it was Jonathan Marsh. That's a bit of a weird one, but he sort of just came in, like he played in the semi-final against Richmond in 2020, which just seems a bit odd to me just because someone wasn't playing or he was not even really a backup. But I don't know. I don't know why I've compared Burns and Marsh, but I just feel kind of lost in his role, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say nearly exactly the same there. It's just, I look at his placement there and I'm like, he's not really a defender though, is he? That's not where he's meant to be fit, particularly this week. Like, first thing I looked at when I looked at that list was forward line. Pretty interesting, depending on if it's Keeler or Caminiti. I'm on board. Midfield, shame about Poe, but it's looking good. And then that back line just feels like we're missing a number sort of thing. You know, you've got Windy isn't a halfback. Burns doesn't feel like a halfback. Naz is going to run off. And then you're left with kind of Stocker, Wilkie, Kama or Keeler. And that's about it. I feel like we're just one short back there of a pure defender, whether that's a Shoei or wherever O'Connell has disappeared to.
Keep in mind as well that Sinclair's listed in the midfield. Like, it's shout out to him. It's his 200th game.
Yeah.
But I don't think he'll be playing much midfield time compared to a Windy. So, Ross and the team just seem to mess around with this list for some reason.
But I'm still... it's great that we've got two explosive halfbacks, but when it comes to a really offensively minded team, I just worry that I don't know how much lockdown we've got. Just to throw names out there, is Wilkie... Well, Caminiti probably goes back to Darcy again. He had a pretty good start last week. Last time we played them, I think they fell apart because he planned for Darcy and then Darcy went down. And then, you've got Bont running through there a lot more this year. Lob could be anywhere. Buku Karmas is quite tall. If Tim English goes forward and O'Donnell, like they've got a lot of tall forwards mixed in with, Riley West, who's in good form as a small. I feel like we're a bit out of shape down back, and that's probably partially because of Dukes. But I think it's partially our own hand as well with having Burns and Windhager back there when they're not. That's not where they'll play for a good chunk.
Yeah, the only player I really wanted to highlight from the back line, because we've spoken about Wilkie at length, was Caminiti, because I feel like I've been too harsh on him. He ended up with 17 touches and 8 marks, I think I wrote down. So that's a great performance. I'm still not sure how confident I am when he kicks the ball, but from a defensive standpoint, really good, really, really good. And I think it'll be interesting, like you say about Dougal, what happens when or if he comes back into the team. Does he replace Caminiti? Does he send him forward? Does that mean that Keeler loses his spot in the team? I feel like there's been a lot of talk about Dougal being someone who potentially doesn't get a new contract at the end of the year. I'm just not sure how that would change the defense. But considering Fritsch was really good this week against Collingwood, from memory, he didn't seem to pop up too much. Cozzy, who goes forward, Windy's touched him up pretty well. I think the defense held solid. Keep in mind they kicked however many behinds they did, but at the same time, a lot of that can be attributed to good defense and putting them under pressure, especially in open play.
Yeah, and now that I'm thinking about it, if the coach's main goal is to balance clearance out like last week and to be like, we cannot afford 25 fewer clearances or however much it ended up being, maybe it makes sense to have that extra midfield role sort of thing, or a few more people that can go through midfield rotations, and just be like, we need to stop them at the source rather than it doesn't really matter who you've got back there if they're getting 70 inside 50s. That's just it's too much for even Wilkie to handle.
Yes, that is very true. Just quickly on Burns, I personally like him further up the ground. I don't really like him as a defender. He gets the heart racing a little bit too much for my liking. So I think he does better further up the ground, sort of setting up play, because there's been times when I've really been quite impressed with him. And then at times down back, I just feel like I don't want to rely on him down there, if I'm honest. So, yeah, not too unhappy seeing him sort of play that wing maybe role.
Yeah.
But, yeah, as a defender, don't love it. On Caminiti, I think given where we're at as a side, I was missing Howard a lot this year, but now I almost think it's a blessing in disguise because we can see what Caminiti brings us and we can just persist with him down back now. That's what I'd like to see. Just play him down back, give him the rest of the year down there, build his confidence, see if he can make that position his own, because Howard's not going to be around forever anyway. So we might as well see what a Caminiti has got. And for mine, his confidence is growing week by week, and that last quarter in particular against the D's, he held some really strong marks and just backed himself in, which is really key. So, yeah, I'd be happy to persist with him. I mean, I think with where we're at, it's very unlikely we're going to be playing finals. So why not? Why not just see, just back him in and see what he's got, basically, because I've liked what I've seen so far, and I'm kind of getting sick of the whole back and forth. And I mean, even Keeler, he did okay down back and then he's done okay forward. So I guess that's another sort of spanner where you can say those two can still alternate. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because it means you do have a bit of an X factor and you can mix it up and whatnot. But I think as a preference, I'd like to just see Caminiti continue down back. And just quickly on Sinclair, I think we need to shout out his 200 games and acknowledge it's just been a joy to watch him and that 35 running around again and doing that number proud with his big calves. And I love the Saints clip they did. I don't know if you saw it, where they basically just did highlights of his calves, which made me laugh. But he's just been such a consistent, awesome player off halfback for us, and really happy for him to get 200 games, and hopefully the team as a whole can live for him. And if anyone deserves a win on their 200s, it sinks. So hopefully the boys can get it done. Before we jump into the Oppo view, I do have a question to ask. We've sort of thrown this in now. It's become a little bit of a thing for us just to mix it up. This one's just more of a general question, not so much related to the Saints, but the AFL in general. I for one, I'm just getting a little bit over. I don't want to throw the umpires under the bus. I think it's more the rules that are annoying me than the umpires themselves and the inconsistencies. Even Pickett on the weekend, he drops the ball, no 50. Like, come on, that's just a blatant 50. I don't know if you saw it at the time, but I just lost my my nut at that decision or non-decision. That's one of them that gets up my goat. The non-decision 50, and then I think the 50 in itself, a lot of the time, the punishment for what the player is doing is just very excessive, and I think that needs to change. So it leads me into my, if you could change one of the rules in the AFL at the moment, so it might be you want to add a rule, which would be a surprise given that I feel like the game is so there's so many rules to keep up with. But maybe if you could get rid of a rule or change a rule, what would you change? And if you needed time to think, I also wanted to throw in, as a Saints supporter, this probably sounds ridiculous, but the goal review, I think it's just completely overdone, and I'd like to see like a challenge system come in. Maybe you get 2. So that would probably be, I know I mentioned the 50, but that's what I want to bring in, just a limit to how many goal reviews there are, because to me it's just annoying and it just ruins the momentum of the game, and they're trying to speed up the game and it just slows it down. But maybe I'm on my own, so keen to get people's take on what rule they would change, and I'll start with you two.
I'm a bit of a rules lawyer. I am not much fun to go to a game with. And I'll admit that, because I'll have my family or mates next to me and they'll be going, ball. And I'll be like, no, he didn't have prior disposal. And then he'd put the evidence to the germane book and I'll over-explain. I made lucid charts to go over step by step. Like, I am not fun. But the same stage, the fact that I had to go through the rules and make a chart to describe how holding the ball works probably says there's something wrong with holding the ball. And I'll carry that. For me, the big thing there that's happened this week, I think they were watching Razor's Edge on AFL 360, where he described it as the umpire is... like, if you've got an arm free, they are looking at you to just throw it at your boot and just hope that it touches something, because that is insufficient attempt to get rid of it. And I think 4 times during the week, I saw someone lying on their back and literally 2 hands just throw it downwards in the hopes that it hits their foot. And it's not called anything because they had a free hand and they made an attempt to get it on their boot. And within the rules right now, that is that. But they got like 10 meters of just throw downwards. So to me, it's too complicated right at the moment, and I love complications. So I don't want to see more of that going forward, of just people throwing it at their boot in hope, and it being called a proper sort of disposal there because they attempted. And then the goal review, I think that's a practice thing, if nothing else. I think the goal umpires probably need to remember that everything is being checked when it goes back to the center anyway. So I'm hoping to see if it's those sort of 51, 49s, they just let it go back to the middle and we'll call it back if we need. There's no need to be checking every single time if they think there's a good chance it's a goal, because it's being checked anyway.
I reckon the one that annoys me the most, and like you were saying, Evan, when you're at games and you over-explain the rules to people, it's like I can remember at least 3 or 4 examples of at a game, a ruckman grabs it out of the ruck, gets dispossessed, and the whole crowd goes bonkers. And I'm like, I say like audibly, it's never a free kick when you grab it out of the ruck. It's just not. It's that rule is you can grab it out of the ruck, get tackled, and it's nothing. That's just it. And no one seems to know that rule. So that really gets on my nerves. I would potentially think about adding third man up again, because that was fun. That was just a fun rule. Like you got a bit of an advantage out of it if you decided to do it. But, that was just an interesting one. I think I was only sort of really getting into footy at the time, but I think, would I be right in saying Brendan Goddard did it a lot?
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Different midfielder?
Yep.
It must have been. It must have been him then. So that sort of rule. And the one that I would change would be the insufficient intent out of bounds. That annoys me to no end, because the amount of times that a player has shanked it or just tried to kick it forward and it rolls out of bounds, it's not about their intent. It's about whether the ball is going to come back into play and it's going to be a stoppage again. They want the game to be moving fast, so they just call insufficient intent. And you see the umpire steaming towards the boundary line. Oh no, they're going to call it again. Like, it's not. I think it should be more of you're either really close to the boundary line, free kick, and you just handball it over, the obvious ones that they still call, or it's a kick and it's just a hack kick out of defense and it goes towards the boundary line. If it's going forward, if it's, a shank, if it's in congestion and someone's just trying to get rid of it, I don't see a world where that's insufficient intent to keep the ball in. That's just trying to clear it from wherever you are rather than trying to get it out of bounds.
But don't you love the crowd's reaction to the thing?
Yeah.
I love the theatre. To a certain degree, I 100% agree with that. It's not much fun yelling out insufficient intent as well. And to a certain degree, I like being down at RSEA and for the AFLW matches, and they just do last touch out of bounds. During, not in the arcs, but in between. There's a cool lasso motion. It's a whole thing. It's getting to the point where we're already asking the umps so much. Reading the mind and working out when the disposal was. It's probably just worth simplifying that one. I don't think it makes the W League any worse for having that rule, and speeds things up.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that, because I've just got that used to umpires now just paying the insufficient. I used to be one of those fans that I'd be like every time, but now I'm just like, it's insufficient. They're gonna pay it. Like, it is what it is, But I kind of agree. I don't mind that aspect of the AFLW where it does sort of make things speed along, and it almost, to me, it is to that degree now, because umpires are just that keen to pay it that to me it almost is last touch. Like, they pay it that often. So I wouldn't mind it just being like an official thing. Yep, last touch goes free kick the other way. So I don't mind that. But just on the 50 as well, like, I don't mind it when the player is time wasting on purpose, Exhibit A, pick it, didn't throw the ball back, put it on the ground. That, to me, that should be 50. But when the players and I know the players know the rules and they shouldn't do it, blah, 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 but like, you're talking like they've gone like a centimetre over the line, like running past, trying to keep up their opponent. It has not impacted the play in the slightest. And the umpire goes and pays 50. I'm like, maybe 25 metres, but 50, like, to get a shot on goal for that and potentially lose a game over something like that.
Yeah.
Which I know everyone will be like, oh, but the player knew better. But it's a lousy rule. It frustrates me so much every time. So that's probably one I'd like to see changed.
Just makes the game look worse as well. Having to see the man on the mark stand completely still, and then the other player is 5 meters to the right, and then he takes one step over or starts moving backwards too late, and it just looks really messy. So it's a newer rule, but yeah, it's getting pretty ugly.
Yeah, don't like it. So maybe speaking of things I don't like, let's look at the Oppo view. I don't mind the dogs, but we'll get stuck into the dogs now, I think. And I don't like them just because they seem to kill us lately every time we play them. So can we please turn that around and actually show up against the dogs tomorrow night for one? And yeah, what are you sort of looking at when we're closing on the dogs and their lineup?
I think you've covered it really well, Evan, to be honest. There's not a lot left to say other than I think Bont going forward worries me because that throws a spanner into the works. I'm not sure how their rotations work, whether Darcy or Norton will be off when Bont goes forward, but he's a matchup nightmare considering Matt Kennedy runs through the midfield as well and seems to bob up for a goal a game at the moment. And he's a bigger body midfielder as well. I just don't think we have the height or strength in defense at the moment to counter that. So unless someone from the midfield goes with him, it feels like the right sort of a game to have a Liam O'Connell or someone in the side to just have a bit of an extra size. But that's probably my biggest worry considering our midfield's been playing better. Yeah, just his impact in the forward line because he can still have 25 touches in the midfield and go forward for 5-10 minutes and kick 2 goals, 1 or something like that, and it just puts the game to bed.
Yeah, 100%. Always got to be worried about the Bont, particularly this year where he's getting to be the ball user rather than the ball winner. They've got Sanders, Fraser, Richards, not to mention Libba in there, just getting clearances for days and doing a really good job. They're one of the best teams in the league, both for scoring off turnover and for scoring off centre clearance, which is just a great combination, and it makes it bizarre that they're 9th on the ladder kind of thing. But it does give me some hope, at least, that we do have some really tough, quick bodies in the midfield there. We've got Jones running through. We've got potentially Stocker following Bont a little bit. I love Stocker, but it's the Bont. We've got, Windy and the like. Hopefully they're able to do what the Hawks did last week, which is not let the Dogs get their uncontested marking game going, which was we let them have like 90 more uncontested possessions last time. They just kept the tackle pressure up. They didn't allow them uncontested possessions. They matched them in clearance. It's a lot to ask midfield to midfield, but it will go such a long way because we know we've got the score off turnover. We've got Naz, we've got Sinks back there for important game. We just need to match their young but really impressive midfield. Throwing Kennedy in there just for fun as well. And Treloar. I forgot about Treloar.
Their team's stacked, which is why I can't believe they're sitting 9th. Like, I rate them a lot higher, but then I don't know if it's just from my Saints point of view because they always seem to kill us and look like they're premiership contenders every time we play them. But yeah, I was also going to mention Kennedy as well. He's just another one who's had a really solid year for the Dogs. So hey, it's going to be a tough ask. And I think looking at Oppo View, we kind of cover like the keys to winning as well because we do have to match them with the pressure. We do have to make sure Bont doesn't get off the chain. He's a crucial matchup. And yeah, maybe Windy at least goes with him in the midfield. I actually don't mind seeing that. Is there anything else you wanted to highlight in terms of your key to winning, or do we think we've covered it pretty well?
He was mentioned in the chat once. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I got excited reading the chat there. The big man, one of my favorite players, many of our favorite players, Rui getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. This is the week. They're not below average, but their weakest point is their points against their defense at the moment. It's the week for Kilda, for Sharman, for someone to have a full-fledged Rui game, get 12 marks and just stamp against a underperforming midfield there, and not midfield, that's fine. Their defense. Just grab hold of that. If we can get close to matching the inside 50s, give our forwards a chance and have someone stand up, that'll go a long way, and hopefully make a former Saint proud.
Yeah. The only other thing that I was going to touch on is, which you kind of covered a little bit, Evan, was that last time we kind of played their game, they forced us into playing their way, or the way they wanted us to play. Whereas this time, I think we need to take more control and play our way and force them to play our game. High pressure, a bit of control, bit of kick mark, and then run and catch them off guard like that, rather than being basically caught chasing tail all game like we were last time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm so sick of them just playing exactly how they want to play, and we're looking like we're witches' hats, essentially. Like, that seems to be how we show up against the Dogs the last couple of times in particular. So, yeah, I really just hope we come out to play. Do it for Sinks in his 200th. Are you thinking we can turn this around and get the job done? What are your tips and margins?
I'm trying to think of a specific stat to throw out again. Let's see. So give me... Whoa. If Bont has more than 25 disposals, we're going for. I'll give that one. But if we can keep him sort of to a lower impact than last time, maybe if, fewer than 4 goals from their midfielders. If you mix in Kennedy, Bontempelli, Sanders, all running through there, then I think we go a long way to matching them this time. But there's a lot of ground to make up compared to last game.
I will always tip St Kilda. I think that's become quite known, especially to you two. No matter what, I'll pick St Kilda. I think I've gone St Kilda by 9, and I think Caminiti to take 8 marks. And I feel like that's a pretty big stat, considering the sort of key forwards he'll be playing on. Hopefully there's more contested marks than uncontested marks, because that says more about the game style. But yeah, 8 plus marks for Caminiti, I think, would be have a big impact on how we defend and then transition into attack.
Lovely. I like it. I like that you always tip the Saints. It makes me positive, and I'm going to go with that trend, and I'm going to say in Sink's 200th, McRae didn't have the greatest showing last time around. So I'm going to say, I'm not sure who will kick the winning goal, but McRae's going to set up the winning goal, and we're going to win by 5 points. And it's going to go off. And that's what I like to see. So the Saints by 5. Hopefully there's an okay crowd on a Thursday night, tomorrow night. Hopefully you can all get down to the game, get behind the boys, we get the job done, and set ourselves up for a nice second half of the season in similar style to what we did last year, at least, would be nice. So, who knows? That we're still in the running to make finals. All hope is not lost just yet. So I'm going to stick
2 games out.
Yeah, so you never know. So on that note, thanks as always to Evan and Ollie for joining me for the chat. It's been fun, as always. And thank you to everybody for tuning in. Have a good evening. It's weird on a Wednesday night. There's no footy following this. So enjoy whatever it is you get up to, and tune into the footy if you can't get down to Marble tomorrow night to cheer on the boys. And as always, go Saints.
Go Saints.
Go Saints.